I stood in the center of the living room, barefoot on Persian rugs worth more than most people's homes, watching my father hold a lighter to the pages of my Bible. The flame danced. Orange. Hungry. Waiting for his command. But the book wouldn't burn. He flicked the lighter again. Once. Twice. 3 times. The flame kissed the pages. I could see it. We all could see it, but the paper remained untouched. Perfect. White. As if the fire itself was afraid to consume it. My father's hand trembled. Not from fear, he didn't know fear. From rage. Pure, black, suffocating rage that filled the room like smoke. "What devil protects this book?" he whispered, his voice like gravel scraping against bone. I should have been terrified. And I was. But underneath the terror was something else, something I'd never felt before in my father's presence. Hope. Because in that moment, with my entire family watching, with my uncles standing at the door ready to drag me to my death, with my mother collapsed on the floor sobbing into her hijab, God himself had entered our home. And he wasn't silent anymore. But let me take you back. Because you need to understand how a girl like me, raised in luxury, wrapped in silk, taught to submit without question, ended up here, in this impossible moment, choosing death over denial. My name means precious jewel in Arabic. And that's exactly what I was. A jewel. A possession. Something beautiful to be displayed, protected, and eventually sold to the highest bidder. I lived in Riyadh, in a palace, yes, an actual palace, with marble columns that stretched toward gilded ceilings, with fountains that ran day and night, with servants who prepared 5-course meals we barely touched. My father owned oil fields, real estate across 3 continents, and a private jet I'd flown in more times than I'd ridden in a car. Every morning, I woke to the call to prayer echoing across the city. The sound used to comfort me, this ancient, haunting melody that promised paradise if I just obeyed. If I just submitted. If I just stayed small, quiet, and perfect. I had everything a girl could want. Designer abayas in every color, black silk, midnight blue, deep emerald. Gold jewelry so heavy it hurt my neck. A bedroom larger than most apartments, with a balcony overlooking gardens that bloomed year-round despite the desert heat. But here's what no one tells you about golden cages: the bars are still bars, even when they're plated in wealth. I couldn't leave the house without a male guardian. Couldn't drive. Couldn't laugh too loud. Couldn't question. Couldn't dream beyond the script already written for my life: perfect daughter, obedient wife, invisible woman. And my father, Baba, was the keeper of my cage. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen nothing? Not hatred. Not love. Just cold calculation, like you're a chess piece instead of a human being? That was my father. He was handsome in that severe, terrifying way, sharp jawline, perfectly trimmed beard, eyes so dark they looked black in certain light. He wore the finest thobes, smelled like expensive oud that made my stomach turn, and spoke in measured tones that made grown men flinch. He never hit me. Didn't need to. His weapon was silence. Disapproval. The slight narrowing of his eyes that made my blood turn to ice. I was 17 when everything shattered. It was a Thursday evening, I remember, because the weekend was coming, and I'd been hopeful I might be allowed to visit my cousin Amira. The sun was setting, painting our walls in shades of amber and gold, and I was in my room, pretending to study Quran like I did every evening. My door opened without a knock. It never did. Privacy was a Western concept, not a right. My father stood there. My mother behind him, her face pale, her hands clutching her abaya like a lifeline. "Habibi," he said. "My dear." But his voice held no warmth. "Come. We have something to discuss." My heart dropped into my stomach. Nothing good ever came from family meetings. I followed them to the main sitting room, the formal one we only used for important guests. My older brother Khalid was there. My uncle Rashid. And a man I didn't recognize, older, maybe 50, with a thick beard and cold, assessing eyes that crawled over me like insects. I knew before anyone spoke. I knew from the way my mother wouldn't look at me. From the way the strange man smiled, not at me, but at my father, like they'd just closed a business deal. Because that's exactly what had happened. "This is Sheikh Abdullah," my father announced, his voice echoing off the marble. "In 3 months, you will become his third wife. The dowry has been agreed upon. The contract will be signed next week." The room tilted. Third wife. I was going to be someone's third wife. I looked at the man, this Sheikh Abdullah with his predatory smile and his age spots and his thick fingers that would soon have the right to touch me, and something inside me cracked. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Small. Barely a whisper. But in that room, in that moment, it was a gunshot. My father's head turned slowly toward me. Those black eyes locked onto mine. "What did you say?" I stood in the center of the living room, barefoot on Persian rugs worth more than most people's homes, watching my father hold a lighter to the pages of my Bible. The flame danced. Orange. Hungry. Waiting for his command. But the book wouldn't burn. He flicked the lighter again. Once. Twice. 3 times. The flame kissed the pages. I could see it. We all could see it, but the paper remained untouched. Perfect. White. As if the fire itself was afraid to consume it. My father's hand trembled. Not from fear, he didn't know fear. From rage. Pure, black, suffocating rage that filled the room like smoke. "What devil protects this book?" he whispered, his voice like gravel scraping against bone. I should have been terrified. And I was. But underneath the terror was something else, something I'd never felt before in my father's presence. Hope. Because in that moment, with my entire family watching, with my uncles standing at the door ready to drag me to my death, with my mother collapsed on the floor sobbing into her hijab, God himself had entered our home. And he wasn't silent anymore. But let me take you back. Because you need to understand how a girl like me, raised in luxury, wrapped in silk, taught to submit without question, ended up here, in this impossible moment, choosing death over denial. My name means precious jewel in Arabic. And that's exactly what I was. A jewel. A possession. Something beautiful to be displayed, protected, and eventually sold to the highest bidder. I lived in Riyadh, in a palace, yes, an actual palace, with marble columns that stretched toward gilded ceilings, with fountains that ran day and night, with servants who prepared 5-course meals we barely touched. My father owned oil fields, real estate across 3 continents, and a private jet I'd flown in more times than I'd ridden in a car. Every morning, I woke to the call to prayer echoing across the city. The sound used to comfort me, this ancient, haunting melody that promised paradise if I just obeyed. If I just submitted. If I just stayed small, quiet, and perfect. I had everything a girl could want. Designer abayas in every color, black silk, midnight blue, deep emerald. Gold jewelry so heavy it hurt my neck. A bedroom larger than most apartments, with a balcony overlooking gardens that bloomed year-round despite the desert heat. But here's what no one tells you about golden cages: the bars are still bars, even when they're plated in wealth. I couldn't leave the house without a male guardian. Couldn't drive. Couldn't laugh too loud. Couldn't question. Couldn't dream beyond the script already written for my life: perfect daughter, obedient wife, invisible woman. And my father, Baba, was the keeper of my cage. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen nothing? Not hatred. Not love. Just cold calculation, like you're a chess piece instead of a human being? That was my father. He was handsome in that severe, terrifying way, sharp jawline, perfectly trimmed beard, eyes so dark they looked black in certain light. He wore the finest thobes, smelled like expensive oud that made my stomach turn, and spoke in measured tones that made grown men flinch. He never hit me. Didn't need to. His weapon was silence. Disapproval. The slight narrowing of his eyes that made my blood turn to ice. I was 17 when everything shattered. It was a Thursday evening, I remember, because the weekend was coming, and I'd been hopeful I might be allowed to visit my cousin Amira. The sun was setting, painting our walls in shades of amber and gold, and I was in my room, pretending to study Quran like I did every evening. My door opened without a knock. It never did. Privacy was a Western concept, not a right. My father stood there. My mother behind him, her face pale, her hands clutching her abaya like a lifeline. "Habibi," he said. "My dear." But his voice held no warmth. "Come. We have something to discuss." My heart dropped into my stomach. Nothing good ever came from family meetings. I followed them to the main sitting room, the formal one we only used for important guests. My older brother Khalid was there. My uncle Rashid. And a man I didn't recognize, older, maybe 50, with a thick beard and cold, assessing eyes that crawled over me like insects. I knew before anyone spoke. I knew from the way my mother wouldn't look at me. From the way the strange man smiled, not at me, but at my father, like they'd just closed a business deal. Because that's exactly what had happened. "This is Sheikh Abdullah," my father announced, his voice echoing off the marble. "In 3 months, you will become his third wife. The dowry has been agreed upon. The contract will be signed next week." The room tilted. Third wife. I was going to be someone's third wife. I looked at the man, this Sheikh Abdullah with his predatory smile and his age spots and his thick fingers that would soon have the right to touch me, and something inside me cracked. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Small. Barely a whisper. But in that room, in that moment, it was a gunshot. My father's head turned slowly toward me. Those black eyes locked onto mine. "What did you say?" If you're watching this, and you've never experienced true fear, the kind that makes your body forget how to breathe, I need you to understand, I was face to face with a man who valued his honor more than my life. Who would kill his own daughter before allowing her to bring shame to his name. But something had broken in me. Some invisible chain that had held me silent for 17 years. I stood there, trembling like a leaf in a sandstorm, and I whispered again, "No. I won't marry him." The room erupted. My father didn't yell. That's what made it so much worse. He stood up slowly, deliberately, his movements calculated like a predator circling prey. The room went silent except for my mother's quiet weeping and the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "Leave us," he said to the others. Not a request. A command. Sheikh Abdullah stood, straightening his thobe, his eyes flickering between my father and me with something like amusement. As if my rebellion was entertaining. As if I was a horse that needed breaking, and he was curious to see how it would be done. "I trust you will educate your daughter on her duties," he said, his voice oily and smooth. "I have raised 3 daughters myself. I understand the challenges of modern girls who consume too much Western poison." He looked directly at me then, and smiled. "But I am a patient man. And I know how to teach obedience." The threat in those words made my skin crawl. My uncle Rashid nodded to my father as he left, a gesture of solidarity, of masculine understanding. My brother Khalid wouldn't even look at me. He just walked out, his jaw clenched, his hands in fists. My mother tried to stay. "Please, Baba, let me out." She flinched like he'd struck her, gathered her abaya, and fled. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound like a coffin closing. I was alone with him. My father walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the gardens where I used to play as a child. Where he used to lift me onto his shoulders and call me his little princess. That man was gone. If he'd ever truly existed. "Do you know what you are?" he asked quietly, still not looking at me. "You are a reflection of my honor, my reputation. Everything I have built, the respect, the business partnerships, the standing in our community, all of it rests on the integrity of my family." He turned then, and the emptiness in his eyes made my bones ache with cold. "You are not a person, daughter. You are a mirror. And right now, you are showing the world a cracked, defective image of me." "Baba, please," my voice broke. "I don't even know him. He's older than you. He already has 2 wives. I can't. You can. You will." He moved closer. I could smell the oud now, mixed with cardamom from the Arabic coffee he'd been drinking. Smells that used to mean safety. Home. Now they meant prison. "Sheikh Abdullah is an influential man," my father continued, his voice never rising above that terrifying calm. "His business connections span the Gulf. His family has ties to the royal court. This marriage elevates our entire family. Your brother will benefit. Your future children will benefit. This is not about your feelings, child. This is about duty, honor, obedience to Allah's design." Allah's design? The words burst out of me before I could stop them. "Or your design? Your business deals? Your reputation?" His hand moved so fast I didn't see it coming. The slap echoed through the room like a crack of thunder. My head snapped to the side, my cheek exploding in hot, stinging pain. I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. I'd never been hit before. Not once in 17 years. The shock of it, the violence, the betrayal, made my knees buckle. I caught myself on the arm of a chair, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. "You will not question me," he said, and now, finally, there was emotion in his voice. Not anger. Disgust. "You will not speak of Allah with that rebellious tongue. You will not disgrace this family with your Western ideas of romance and choice. You are a woman. Your purpose is to obey. First your father, then your husband. That is Islam. That is the natural order." He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. His fingers dug into my jaw so hard I knew they'd leave bruises. "Look at me," he commanded. "Look at me." I did. Through tears. Through pain. Through the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about my father. "In 3 months, you will marry Sheikh Abdullah. You will smile. You will be grateful. You will thank me for arranging such an advantageous match. And if you ever," his grip tightened, "ever speak to me with disrespect again, I will make you wish you had never been born. Do you understand?" I wanted to be brave. I wanted to fight. But I was 17 years old, trapped in a country where I had no rights, no voice, no escape. Where the law itself would side with my father. Where rebellion meant death or worse. So I did the only thing I could do. I nodded. He released me, shoving my face away like I was something disgusting he'd accidentally touched. I stumbled backward, catching myself against the wall. You have 3 months to adjust your attitude, he said, walking toward the door. I suggest you spend that time in prayer, asking Allah to remove the demons of pride from your heart. Your mother will begin preparing your wedding trousseau tomorrow. The seamstress will come for measurements next week. He paused at the door, his hand on the handle, and looked back at me one last time. I loved you once, he said quietly. When you were small and obedient and sweet. But you have become something ugly. Something rebellious. Something that needs to be corrected. Perhaps Sheikh Abdullah will succeed where I have failed. Then he left. And I collapsed onto the floor, my hand pressed against my burning cheek, my whole body shaking with silent sobs I didn't dare let him hear. That night, I lay in my enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house settling into sleep. My cheek throbbed. My jaw ached where he'd gripped it. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the horror of what my life had become in the span of one conversation. 3 months. In 3 months, I would belong to Sheikh Abdullah. A man I didn't know. A man older than my own father. A man with 2 other wives who would resent me. A man who looked at me like I was property he'd just acquired. I would share his bed. Bear his children. Serve him for the rest of my life. And if I refused, if I ran, if I fought, my own family would hunt me down. Because honor killings weren't just stories. They were real. They happened. And my father's eyes had already shown me he was capable of it. I pulled my pillow over my face and screamed into it. A silent, suffocated scream that no one would hear. Have you ever felt so trapped that your own skin feels like a prison? Where every breath is an act of rebellion because part of you just wants to stop breathing altogether. That's where I was. I thought about death. Constantly. Would it hurt to jump from my balcony? Would it be quick? Would Allah really send me to hell for refusing to endure this living hell? But I was too afraid. Too weak. Too nothing. So instead, I prayed. I got out of bed, performed wudu in my private bathroom, the ritual washing I'd done 5 times a day since childhood. I unrolled my prayer mat, faced Mecca, and prostrated myself on the floor. Allah, I whispered in Arabic, my forehead pressed against the soft fabric. Allah, please. Help me. Save me. Change my father's heart. Send me a miracle. Send me anything. I can't do this. I can't. Please. Please. I prayed through my tears until my knees ached and my back cramped. I recited every surah I'd memorized. I begged. I bargained. I promised to be better, more obedient, more faithful. Nothing. Just silence. Cold, empty, crushing silence. The ceiling didn't open. No angel appeared. No divine intervention rescued me from my nightmare. Just me. Alone. On a prayer mat in a golden cage. I didn't know it then, but that night, that moment of absolute desperation and unanswered prayers, was the beginning of the end of everything I'd ever believed. And the beginning of something I never could have imagined. The next morning, I woke up with my face swollen and my soul hollow. I touched my cheek gently, still tender, slightly bruised despite the makeup I would later cake on to hide the evidence. But you can't put makeup on a broken heart. You can't conceal the kind of damage that happens when the person who's supposed to protect you becomes the person you need protection from. My mother came to my room before breakfast. She didn't knock either, none of them ever did. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red and puffy from crying, her hands twisting the edge of her hijab nervously. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Might hold me. Might tell me she would fight for me. You need to be reasonable, Habibti, she whispered instead, glancing over her shoulder as if my father might hear. Sheikh Abdullah is a good man. Respected. Wealthy. You will want for nothing. Except freedom, I said flatly. Except choice. Except love. She flinched. Love? The word came out bitter, almost mocking. Love is a Western fairy tale. Love is what happens after marriage, through commitment and children and shared duty. Your father and I, we learn to love each other. You will too. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the resignation in her eyes. At the way she held herself, small and apologetic, even in her own daughter's room. At the invisible chains she wore so comfortably she'd forgotten they were there. Did you, Ummi? I asked quietly. Did you really learn to love him? Or did you just learn to survive him? Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Because we both knew the truth. She turned and left without another word. And I realized with horrifying clarity, I had no allies. Not even my own mother would save me. The days blurred together after that. A haze of forced normalcy punctuated by moments of sharp, suffocating panic. The seamstress came. Measured me for wedding dresses I didn't want. Showed me fabrics and whites and creams and golds while I stood there like a mannequin, my mind screaming, my mouth silent. My aunts visited. Congratulated me with strained smiles. Told me how lucky I was. How blessed. How Sheikh Abdullah could have chosen anyone, but he'd chosen me. Lucky. Blessed. Chosen. The words felt like acid in my ears. My brother Khalid avoided me completely. When we passed in the hallways, he looked through me as if I were a ghost. As if I'd already ceased to exist as his sister and had become merely an embarrassment he had to tolerate. And my father, Baba, acted as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't struck me. Hadn't crushed my soul. Hadn't sold me like livestock. He was pleasant at dinner. Asked about my studies. Commented on the weather. The cognitive dissonance nearly drove me insane. But the worst part, the absolutely crushing, soul-destroying worst part, was the silence from Allah. I prayed 5 times a day. Every single day. I never missed a prayer, not once. Far before sunrise, when the world was still dark and quiet. At noon, under the blazing sun. Asr, in the afternoon. Maghrib, at sunset. Isha, before bed. 5 times a day, I washed myself. Covered myself. Faced Mecca. Prostrated myself. Recited the same prayers I'd been reciting since I was 6 years old. And 5 times a day, I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Like praying into a void. Like speaking to a wall. Allah, please, I would beg between the formal prayers. Show me a sign. Tell me what to do. How do I bear this? How do I survive this? Are you even there? Silence. I fasted extra days beyond Ramadan. I gave money to the poor from my allowance. I read the Quran for hours, searching for some verse, some promise, some hope that would make this bearable. I found rules. Endless rules. Submission. Obedience. Instructions for women to lower their gaze, cover their bodies, obey their husbands, accept their lot. But I found no comfort. No love. No presence. Have you ever prayed to someone you're not sure is listening? Have you ever felt so alone in your faith that the rituals become mechanical, empty gestures you perform out of fear rather than love? That's where I was. Going through the motions. Terrified to stop because maybe, if I just prayed harder, fasted longer, submitted more completely, Allah would finally answer. But He didn't. 6 weeks passed. Then 7. Then 8. The wedding loomed closer like an execution date. Because that's what it was, an execution of who I was, who I might have become, every dream I'd secretly harbored. I started having nightmares. Every night. Dreams where I was trapped in a room with no doors. Where Sheikh Abdullah's face morphed into something demonic. Where I screamed and screamed but no sound came out. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, my heart racing, and I'd stumble to the bathroom and splash water on my face and stare at myself in the mirror. Who was this girl looking back at me? This hollow-eyed, broken thing? I didn't recognize her anymore. One night, about 2 months into my engagement nightmare, I had a complete breakdown. It was after Isha prayer. I'd performed it mechanically, my mind elsewhere, my heart numb. I rolled up my prayer mat and sat on my bed and stared at the wall. And suddenly, everything inside me just shattered. I grabbed my Quran, the beautiful, leather-bound one my father had given me when I'd memorized my first surah. I opened it randomly, desperately, hoping for something, anything. My eyes fell on Surah An-Nisa, verse 34. I'd read it before, but never really absorbed it. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given the one more strength than the other. As to those women on whose part you fear disloyalty and ill conduct, admonish them, refuse to share their beds, beat them. Beat them. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. This was my religion. My holy book. My God's instructions. Women were to be obedient. To be controlled. To be beaten if they disobeyed. And I was disobeying. Was I the problem? Was I the broken one? Was my desire for choice, for freedom, for love, was that actually rebellion against God Himself? Maybe my father was right. Maybe I was defective. Maybe Sheikh Abdullah would fix me. Maybe I deserved this. I closed the Quran and held it against my chest and sobbed so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Why won't you answer me? I screamed into my pillow. What do you want from me? What am I doing wrong? I'm trying. I'm praying. I'm obeying. Why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel so alone? Nothing. Just the sound of my own broken breathing and the distant call to prayer from a nearby mosque, a reminder that everyone else seemed to find peace in Islam. Everyone else seemed to hear Allah. Everyone but me. I was drowning. Drowning in rules, in expectations, in rituals that brought no life. Drowning in a religion that felt like chains rather than freedom. And my God, the one I'd worshipped my entire life, couldn't hear me. Or worse, he heard me and didn't care. That thought, that horrible, terrifying thought, broke something fundamental inside me. If Allah wouldn't save me, if my family wouldn't save me, if no one in this entire world cared whether I lived or died or suffered or endured, then I truly was alone. Completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. I cried until I had no tears left. Until my body was exhausted. Until the darkness outside my window began to soften into the gray of approaching dawn. And in that moment, in that absolute rock bottom of despair, something shifted. A thought. A whisper. So quiet I almost missed it. What if you've been praying to the wrong God? I sat up, my heart suddenly pounding. Where did that come from? That wasn't my thought. Was it? I looked around my room as if someone might be there. But I was alone. Just me and the pre-dawn silence and that impossible, dangerous, heretical thought echoing in my mind. What if you've been praying to the wrong God? No. No. That was shirk, the unforgivable sin. To question Allah, to even consider that there might be something else, someone else. But the thought wouldn't leave. And for the first time in 2 months, I felt something other than despair. I felt curiosity. Dangerous, forbidden, possibly damning curiosity. What if? I couldn't get that thought out of my head. What if you've been praying to the wrong God? It haunted me. Followed me through the house like a shadow I couldn't shake. Whispered to me during prayers until the Arabic words felt foreign on my tongue, like I was reciting a script I no longer believed. But I had no idea where to even begin looking for answers. In Saudi Arabia, questioning Islam wasn't just taboo, it was illegal. Punishable by death. Bibles were contraband. Churches didn't exist. Even searching online for information about other religions could get you arrested if the religious police monitored your internet activity. I was trapped in a country where curiosity could kill you. But desperation makes you brave in ways nothing else can. 3 days after that thought first entered my mind, I was in my father's study, a place I rarely entered, a masculine sanctuary of dark wood and leather and the permanent smell of oud and tobacco. I was looking for a book on Arabic poetry my tutor had recommended, scanning the shelves of leather-bound volumes. That's when I saw it. Hidden behind a row of Islamic texts, pushed back into the shadows where it clearly wasn't meant to be seen, a book with English words on the spine. My heart stopped. I glanced at the door. Empty. My father was at his office downtown. My mother was visiting relatives. The servants were in another wing of the house. I was alone. My hand trembled as I reached for it, pulling it from its hiding place. The cover was plain, black, worn at the edges like it had been held many times. Handled in secret, just like I was doing now. Holy Bible, it said in simple gold letters. I nearly dropped it. A Bible. In my father's study. Hidden but there. Real. Forbidden. Dangerous. Why did he have this? Was it evidence from some legal case? A trophy from a converted infidel? A tool for teaching us what the Christians believed so we could better refute them? I didn't know. Didn't care. My hands shook as I opened it, the pages thin and delicate, covered in tiny English text. I'd learned English in school, we all did, the language of business in the West, but I'd never read anything like this. I flipped through randomly, my eyes catching on strange names. Matthew, Luke, John. Letters from someone named Paul to various cities. Poetry. Prophecies. Stories I'd never heard. Then I found the red words. Passages where the text was printed in red ink, standing out from the rest. I didn't know it then, but these were the words of Jesus, Isa, as we called him in Islam. A prophet, we were taught. A good man. But just a man. Not divine. Not the Son of God, because God has no son. My eyes fell on a passage in the book of Matthew, chapter 11. Red words. Jesus speaking. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I read it again and again. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I was weary, exhausted, burdened with rules and expectations and a future I couldn't escape. And I will give you rest. Rest. When had I ever felt rest? Peace? True, deep, soul-level peace? Never. Not once in 17 years of Islamic practice. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. But Islam wasn't easy. It wasn't light. It was heavy, 5 prayers a day, endless rules about cleanliness and dress and behavior, constant fear of doing something wrong, of being impure, of displeasing Allah who seemed always angry, always demanding, always distant. This Jesus, this prophet who spoke in red letters, was offering something completely different. Something I'd been starving for without even knowing it. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Panic exploded in my chest. I shoved the Bible back into its hiding place, making sure the Islamic texts were positioned exactly as they'd been before. I grabbed the poetry book I'd supposedly been looking for and spun around just as one of our servants passed by the open door. She glanced at me, nodded politely, and continued on. I stood there, clutching the poetry book, my heart hammering so violently I thought I might pass out. I'd just touched a Bible. Read from it. Let its words enter my mind. If anyone found out. I forced myself to breathe. To walk calmly back to my room. To close the door and lock it and sink onto my bed, the poetry book forgotten on my nightstand. Those words kept echoing in my head. Come to me, and I will give you rest. Who was this Jesus who invited rather than commanded? Who offered rest instead of burdens? Who called himself gentle and humble? This wasn't the distant, angry God I'd been praying to. This was something else entirely. I needed to know more. That night, after everyone was asleep, I crept back to my father's study. My hands were sweating. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like an explosion. Every shadow looked like my father waiting to catch me in the act of ultimate betrayal. But I made it. Closed the door softly. turned on the small desk lamp, angling it away from the window so no one outside would see the light. I pulled the Bible from its hiding place and sat on the floor in the corner, my back against the wall, the book open in my lap. I had no idea where to start. So I did what I'd done before, flipped randomly, letting the pages fall where they would. The Book of John. Chapter 3. I started reading. A story about a religious leader named Nicodemus who came to Jesus at night, in secret, just like I was reading in secret, to ask him questions. And Jesus told him something that made my breath catch. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. I read it 3 times. God so loved the world. Loved. Not tolerated. Not tested. Not kept at a distance. Loved. In Islam, we weren't supposed to say Allah loved us. It was presumptuous. We said he was merciful, yes, but his love was conditional, earned through perfect obedience, and even then, you could never be sure. You wouldn't know if you'd made it to Jannah until Judgment Day. But this verse said God loved the world. Loved it so much he sent his Son, not to condemn, but to save. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Something that had been locked and frozen for so long I'd forgotten it existed. Hope. Fragile. Terrifying. Dangerous. But real. I kept reading. Hungry now. Desperate for more. I read about Jesus healing people. Touching lepers, the unclean, the untouchable, and making them whole. I read about him talking to women in public, which was scandalous in his culture, treating them like human beings with minds and souls worth engaging. I read about him eating with sinners and outcasts and prostitutes, and when the religious leaders condemned him for it, he said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Sinners. People like me. People who questioned. People who struggled. People who felt broken and defective. He came for us. Not to condemn us. To call us. To heal us. I read until my eyes burned and my neck ached from hunching over in the dim light. I read about Jesus dying on a cross, executed like a criminal, and I didn't understand it at first. Why would God let his Son die? What kind of victory was that? But then I got to the end of the Gospels. The part where he rose from the dead. Where death itself couldn't hold him. Where he defeated the grave and appeared to his followers and proved that he was exactly who he claimed to be, the Son of God. The Savior. The way, the truth, and the life. I closed the book and sat there in the darkness, trembling. Everything I'd been taught, about Isa being just a prophet, about the Bible being corrupted, about Christians being misguided infidels, all of it was crumbling like sand castles against waves. Because these words didn't feel corrupted. They felt alive. They felt true in a way nothing else ever had. But accepting that truth meant everything I'd believed was a lie. Everything my family stood for. Everything my culture was built on. It meant I was committing the unforgivable sin. Shirk. Associating partners with Allah. The one thing that could never be forgiven, not in this life or the next. It meant if I was wrong, I'd burn in hell forever. But if I was right, If I was right, then Jesus was real. And he was offering me exactly what I'd been dying for: rest, peace, freedom, unconditional love. I heard the call to prayer begin, the dawn prayer. In a few minutes, my family would be awake, performing their ablutions, rolling out their prayer mats. I shoved the Bible back into its hiding place and slipped out of the study, my mind reeling, my heart torn between terror and exhilaration. I went to my room, performed wudu mechanically, unrolled my prayer mat. But this time, when I prostrated myself toward Mecca, I didn't pray to Allah. I prayed to Jesus. I don't know if you're real, I whispered into the carpet, tears streaming down my face. I don't know if you can hear me. But if you're who that book says you are, if you really love me, if you really came to save people like me, I need you to show me. Please. I can't keep living like this. I can't marry that man. I can't survive this alone. If you're real, prove it. Show me. Save me. I held my breath, half expecting lightning to strike me dead for my blasphemy. But instead, I felt something I'd never felt before in all my years of Islamic prayer. Warmth. Gentle. Surrounding me like arms I couldn't see. Like presence. Like love. It was so subtle I thought I might be imagining it. But it was there. Real. Unmistakable. And in that moment, I knew. He heard me. Jesus heard me. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the obedient daughter. I attended wedding dress fittings. Smiled when aunts visited. Nodded when Sheikh Abdullah came to the house with gifts, perfume that made my stomach turn, jewelry that felt like shackles, a Quran bound in leather that I accepted with trembling hands while he watched me with those predatory eyes. But by night, I belonged to Jesus. Every night, after the house fell silent, I would sneak to my father's study. I'd pull that forbidden Bible from its hiding place and read by the dim light of the desk lamp, my heart pounding, my soul awakening for the first time in my life. I read the Sermon on the Mount and wept at the beauty of it. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Everything Islam said was weakness, Jesus called blessed. I read about the woman caught in adultery, how the religious men wanted to stone her, but Jesus said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And when they all left, he told her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." No condemnation. Just grace. Just love. Just a call to freedom. I read about the Samaritan woman at the well, a woman with a shameful past, multiple divorces, living with a man who wasn't her husband. The kind of woman my culture would have buried to her neck and stoned to death. But Jesus spoke to her, offered her living water, told her he was the Messiah. He revealed himself to her. An outcast. A woman. A sinner. If he could love her, could he love me? I began praying to him constantly. Not the ritualistic prayers of Islam, no washing, no Arabic, no memorized verses. Just talking. Like he was there. Like he was listening. Jesus, I'm scared. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Please show me what to do. Jesus, my father looked at me today like I'm already dead to him. Do you see me? Do you care? Jesus, if you're real, I need more than feelings. I need proof. I need a sign I can't deny. And then, exactly 16 days before my wedding, he answered. It was a Thursday night. I remember because Friday was the holy day, and the house always had a different energy on Thursday evenings, everyone preparing for Jummah prayer, my father in an especially pious mood, the servants cooking special meals. I'd spent the day in agony. Sheikh Abdullah had visited again, this time bringing his first wife, a cold, bitter woman who looked at me with barely concealed contempt. She'd circled me like a buyer inspecting livestock, commenting on my hips, my skin, my hair. She's young, the woman had said to her husband, as if I wasn't standing right there. She'll need training. But she's pretty enough. She'll bear you strong sons, inshallah. I'd smiled, nodded, played my part while screaming internally. That night, I couldn't sneak to the study. Too many people were awake, moving through the house. So I stayed in my room, sitting on my bed, staring at the wall. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness. I'm running out of time. 16 days. 16 days until I become his property. If you're going to do something, you need to do it now. I need you. Please. Please don't abandon me like Allah did. I was exhausted. Emotionally drained. I lay down on my bed, still fully dressed in my abaya, and closed my eyes. And I fell asleep. I don't know how else to explain what happened next except to tell you exactly what I experienced. I was in a dream, but it wasn't like a normal dream. It was more real than reality. More vivid. More solid. I could feel everything, smell everything, sense everything with a clarity that made waking life seem like the dream. I was standing in darkness. Complete, absolute darkness. Not the darkness of a room at night, but the darkness of a void. Of nothingness. Of death. I was terrified. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing into the emptiness. Is anyone there? No answer. Just that crushing, suffocating darkness pressing in on all sides. I tried to move, but I couldn't feel the ground beneath my feet. I couldn't tell if I was standing or falling or floating. The disorientation made panic claw at my throat. Help me. I screamed. Someone help me. And then, light. Not gradually. Not like a sunrise. But instant. Blinding. Overwhelming. It poured into the darkness like water filling a void, driving out every shadow, every trace of blackness. It was golden and white and somehow alive, pulsing with warmth and power and presence. I threw my hands up to shield my eyes, but the light didn't hurt. It should have, it was so bright, but instead, it felt like coming home after being lost in the cold for years. And in the center of the light, a figure began to form. A man. Tall. Dressed in white robes that seemed to be made of the light itself. His face. I can't describe his face. I've tried so many times since then, and words fail me every time. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but not in a physical way. It was beauty that came from the inside out. Authority and gentleness mixed together in perfect balance. Power and humility existing in the same expression. His eyes, oh God, his eyes, were like fire, but not destructive fire. Purifying fire. Truth fire. The kind of fire that burns away everything false and leaves only what's real. And when those eyes looked at me, I felt completely naked. Not physically, but spiritually. Like every secret, every sin, every shameful thought I'd ever had was exposed in that light. I should have been terrified. Should have wanted to hide. But I couldn't move. Couldn't look away. Who are you? I whispered, though I already knew. Somehow, I knew. He smiled. And that smile, it broke something inside me. Something hard and protective and afraid. It shattered it like glass. You know who I am, he said. His voice. Listen to me carefully. His voice was not loud, but it filled everything. It resonated not just in my ears, but in my chest, my bones, my soul. It was the voice of someone who spoke worlds into existence, who calmed storms with a word, who raised the dead with a command. But it was also gentle. So gentle. Like a father speaking to a frightened child. Jesus, I breathed. Yes. Tears exploded from my eyes, hot, uncontrollable, years of pain and loneliness and fear pouring out in violent sobs. I collapsed to my knees, or at least I think I did. The ground beneath me was solid now, glowing with the same golden light. I'm sorry, I choked out. I'm sorry. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to see you. I'm nobody. I'm broken. You are mine. 3 words. Simple. Absolute. Undeniable. You are mine, he repeated, and suddenly he was closer, though I didn't see him move. He was kneeling in front of me, and his hand, his actual hand, reached out and touched my face. The moment his fingers brushed my cheek, I felt it. Love. Pure, unconditional, overwhelming love. The kind I'd been searching for my entire life. The kind I'd begged my father for, my mother for, Allah for. The kind that doesn't ask for performance or perfection or payment. The kind that just is. I see you, he said, wiping away my tears with his thumb. I've always seen you. Every prayer you prayed into the silence. Every tear you cried alone. Every moment you felt abandoned. I was there. I've always been there. Waiting for you to call my name. But I worshipped the wrong God, I sobbed. For 17 years, You worshipped the God you were taught to worship. But your heart was always searching for me. And now you've found me. Or rather, I've found you. He smiled again, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Lord, I whispered, the word feeling right in a way nothing ever had before. Lord, I'm supposed to marry him. In 16 days. I can't escape. I have no power. No rights. No way out. I'm trapped. Do you trust me? He asked. It was such a simple question. But the weight of it, the implications, made my breath catch. Did I trust him? This Jesus I'd only known for 2 weeks. This God-man who was forbidden, illegal, dangerous to even acknowledge? Did I trust him more than my own plans? More than my family? More than my fear? I looked into his eyes, those burning, beautiful, terrifying eyes that saw everything I was and loved me anyway. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I trust you." "Then watch what I do," he said. "Watch what I do when my children cry out to me. Watch what I do to the plans of men who seek to destroy what I have created. Watch and believe." He stood, still holding my hand, pulling me to my feet. "You won't marry Sheikh Abdullah," he said with absolute authority. "That is not my plan for you. My plan is freedom, purpose, life abundant. And nothing, not your father, not your culture, not hell itself, can stop what I have purposed for you." "But how?" I asked. "How will you?" "Faith is trusting me even when you can't see the way. Can you do that? Can you walk forward when the path is dark, knowing I am the light?" I nodded, tears still streaming down my face. "Then go," he said. "Go back. And when the moment comes, when everything seems lost and you're standing on the edge of destruction, speak my name. Proclaim me before them all. And I will move heaven and earth to save you." The light began to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, like a sunset in reverse. "Wait," I cried, reaching for him. "Don't leave. Please don't." "I never leave," he said, his voice echoing even as his form dissolved into the light. "I am with you always. Even to the end of the age. Remember that. When you're afraid, when you're alone, when you think I've forgotten you, I am there. I am always there." And then I woke up. I gasped, sitting bolt upright in my bed, my heart racing, my face wet with tears. It was still night. The house was still silent. Nothing had changed in the physical world. But everything had changed inside me. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart pound beneath my palm. Feeling the echo of his touch still on my face. Feeling the absolute certainty that I hadn't just had a dream. I'd met Jesus. The real Jesus. The living God who saw me and loved me and had a plan for my life that didn't involve becoming Sheikh Abdullah's third wife. I didn't know how he would do it. Didn't know what his plan was. But for the first time since my father had announced my engagement, I felt something other than despair. I felt faith. Dangerous, illogical, completely insane faith. And I knew, with the same certainty I knew my own name, that everything was about to change. The 2 weeks between my encounter with Jesus and my wedding day were the strangest of my life. On the outside, I played my role perfectly. The obedient bride. The submissive daughter. I attended the henna party where women decorated my hands with intricate patterns while singing wedding songs. I smiled for photographs. I accepted gifts and congratulations with gracious nods. But on the inside, I was a different person entirely. I had a secret now. A hope that no one could see. A promise from the living God that he would not abandon me. Every morning, I would wake up and whisper his name. Jesus. Just that. Just his name. And I would feel that same warmth, that same presence I'd felt in the dream, reminding me I wasn't alone. I stopped praying to Allah. Completely. No more 5 daily prayers. No more ablutions. No more pretending. My mother noticed. "You didn't pray far this morning," she said one day, her voice tight with worry. "Or yesterday morning. Are you ill?" "I prayed in my room, I lied. Privately." She looked at me with suspicion, but didn't push. She was too focused on the wedding preparations to interrogate my spiritual life. My father noticed nothing. To him, I'd already ceased to exist as a daughter. I was a contract, a transaction, a problem solved. But Sheikh Abdullah noticed everything. He visited more frequently as the wedding approached, his eyes tracking my every movement like a predator studying prey. He brought more gifts, more perfume, more jewelry, a new Quran with my name embossed in gold on the cover. "Soon," he would say, his voice oily and possessive. "Soon you will be mine, and I will teach you what it means to be a proper wife." The way he said teach made my skin crawl. But I would smile and nod and thank him, all while praying silently, "Jesus, you promised. You promised." And then, the night before my wedding, I had another dream. This time, I was standing in a large room. I recognized it immediately as our main sitting room, the formal one where my father had first announced my engagement. But the room was empty except for one thing. A table in the center. And on that table, my Bible, the one from my father's study, lying open. I walked toward it slowly, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. When I reached it, I looked down at the open pages. The Book of Daniel. Chapter 3. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 Jewish men who refused to bow to the Babylonian king's golden statue and were thrown into a furnace as punishment. My eyes scanned the text until they landed on one verse, highlighted as if someone had traced it with golden light. "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. But even if he does not." I read it again. These 3 men were willing to die rather than compromise their faith. They trusted God to save them, but even if he didn't, even if they burned, they wouldn't bow. Was Jesus asking me to do the same? I heard his voice then, not audible but clear as if he were standing next to me. "Tomorrow, you will face your fire. Stand firm. Do not bow. And I will show them all who I am." I woke with a start, dawn light just beginning to creep through my window. My wedding day had arrived. The house erupted into controlled chaos from the moment I opened my eyes. Servants rushed through the halls. My mother burst into my room with the makeup artist and hairstylist in tow. My aunts arrived with the wedding dress, layers of white silk and gold embroidery that must have cost more than a car. They dressed me like a doll, painted my face, arranged my hair in elaborate braids woven with gold thread, hung jewelry on my neck, my wrists, my ears until I could barely move under the weight of it all. I stared at myself in the mirror and saw a stranger. A beautiful, decorated, empty shell. "Mashallah," my mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "You look like a queen." I looked like a sacrifice. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for 7 p.m. It would take place in our home, traditional, proper, with a sheikh presiding and witnesses present. Sheikh Abdullah would arrive with his family. The contract would be signed. And I would belong to him. The hours crawled by. My stomach twisted with nausea. My hands trembled so badly they had to keep reapplying my makeup. But underneath the fear, I felt something else. That same strange, illogical peace I'd felt since my encounter with Jesus. A knowing. A certainty that he had not brought me this far to abandon me now. "Watch what I do," he'd said. "And believe." So I waited. And I prayed silently with every breath, "Jesus. Jesus. Jesus." 7 o'clock arrived. Our formal sitting room had been transformed. Chairs lined the walls for guests, my extended family, Sheikh Abdullah's family, business associates of my father's. The sheikh who would officiate stood at the front, Quran in hand. And there, sitting in the place of honor, was Sheikh Abdullah. Dressed in pristine white thobes, his beard freshly oiled, his eyes locked on me with triumph and possession. I was led in by my uncle Rashid, my male guardian for the ceremony since my father would sign the contract. I walked slowly, my legs shaking beneath my dress, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I was seated across from Sheikh Abdullah with a small table between us. On that table, the marriage contract, waiting for signatures. A Quran. A pen. The sheikh began reciting prayers in Arabic. Verses about marriage, submission, obedience. The room was silent except for his voice and the rustle of expensive fabric as guests shifted in their seats. Then he looked at Sheikh Abdullah. "Do you accept this woman as your wife, under the conditions outlined in this contract, according to Islamic law?" "I accept," Sheikh Abdullah said, his voice resonating with authority and satisfaction. The sheikh turned to me. This was it. The moment. "Do you accept this man as your husband, under the conditions outlined in this contract, according to Islamic law?" The room held its breath. I looked at Sheikh Abdullah. At his cold, predatory eyes. At the wedding ring in his hand, waiting to claim me. I looked at my father, sitting rigid in his chair, his face expressionless but his eyes warning me, "Say yes. Say yes or face the consequences." I looked at my mother, sobbing quietly into her hands, knowing she couldn't save me even if she wanted to. I looked at all of them, these people who should have protected me, loved me, valued me, and realized they'd already sold me. I was a commodity. A transaction. A thing. But Jesus said I was his. And I chose to believe him. I stood up. The room erupted in confused murmurs. The sheikh's eyes widened. Sheikh Abdullah's face darkened with anger. "Sit down," my father commanded, his voice low and dangerous. "No," I said quietly. "What did you say?" My father stood now, his whole body rigid with rage. I pulled off my hijab, the delicate, expensive veil they'd arranged so carefully. My hair fell loose around my shoulders. The room gasped. I said no, I repeated, louder this time. "I will not marry him. I will not submit to this. I will not live a lie anymore." My father moved toward me, his hand raised. "You will be silent. I belong to Jesus Christ." The words exploded from my mouth with a power I didn't know I had. They echoed off the marble walls, filling every corner of that room. Dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop. My father froze mid-step, his face twisting into something between shock and fury. Sheikh Abdullah stood, his hands in fists. My mother collapsed completely, wailing as if I'd been shot. "You dare," my father whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "You dare speak that name in my house? You dare reject Islam? Islam rejected me, I said, and I was crying now, but not from fear. From freedom. From truth finally spoken aloud. I prayed to Allah for years and heard nothing. But Jesus heard me. Jesus answered me. Jesus loves me. And I will not deny him. Even if it costs me everything. My uncle Rashid grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh. You will recant this blasphemy right now, or what? I challenged, looking him dead in the eye. You'll kill me? Then kill me. Because I'd rather die as Jesus' daughter than live as your slave. My father moved toward me, and I saw murder in his eyes. Real, actual intent to end my life for the dishonor I'd brought on his name. You will burn that Bible, he said, each word deliberate and cold. The one you've been sneaking from my study. Yes, I know. The servants told me. You will burn it now, before everyone, and you will beg Allah's forgiveness, or I will kill you myself. He snapped his fingers, and a servant rushed in carrying the Bible, my Bible, the one I'd been reading in secret for weeks. My father took it from her and pulled out a lighter from his pocket. Burn it, he commanded, shoving the book toward me. Prove your loyalty. Prove you renounce this false god. Burn it, or I burn you. The room was utterly silent. Everyone watched. Waited. I looked at the Bible in his outstretched hand. At the lighter in his other hand, flame already lit. And I heard Jesus' voice in my spirit, stand firm. Do not bow. I won't, I whispered. What? I won't. I shouted. Do what you want to me. But I will not deny Jesus. I will not burn his word. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and nothing you do to me will change that. My father's face contorted with rage. He flicked the lighter, bringing the flame to the Bible's pages right there in front of everyone. Then watch your false god's book turn to ash, he snarled. He held the flame to the corner of the Bible. Once. Twice. 3 times. And nothing happened. The flame touched the paper, we could all see it, everyone in that room witnessed it, but the pages didn't catch. Didn't burn. Didn't even char. My father's hand began to shake. He tried again, holding the lighter directly against the pages for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Nothing. The Bible remained perfect. Untouched. As if the fire itself refused to consume it. Someone in the back of the room gasped. Then another. Whispers erupted like wildfire. It won't burn, someone said. The book, it's not burning. What sorcery is this? My father dropped the Bible as if it had burned him. It fell to the floor with a soft thud, still perfectly intact. He stumbled backward, his face drained of color, staring at the book like it was a living thing. And then, the room filled with light. Not from the chandeliers. Not from any natural source. But from everywhere and nowhere at once. Golden, warm, overwhelming light that made everyone freeze where they stood. I felt him before I saw him. That presence. That love. That power. Jesus was here. Not visible to everyone. I don't think they could see him the way I could. But they felt him. They knew something was in that room with us. Something holy. Something terrifying. Something far beyond human understanding. My father fell to his knees, his hands over his face. Sheikh Abdullah backed away, his mouth open in wordless shock. My mother sobbed uncontrollably. And I stood in the center of it all, surrounded by that light, feeling his arms around me even though I couldn't see them. I told you, I heard him whisper. I told you I would deliver you. Now go. Walk out of here. And don't look back. The light began to fade, but the room was still in chaos, people crying, praying, arguing about what they just witnessed. And I, still wearing my wedding dress, my face streaked with tears and running makeup, walked toward the door. If you leave, my father's voice came from behind me, broken and desperate. You are dead to me. Dead to this family. You will have nothing. No one. Do you understand? Nothing. I stopped at the door and looked back at him one last time. I have Jesus, I said simply. That's more than everything you have. And I walked out into the night. I had no plan. No money. No phone, I'd left it in my room. No identification documents. No way to leave the country even if I could get to the airport. I was wearing a wedding dress worth thousands of riyals, gold jewelry that marked me as valuable property, and nothing else. Not even shoes. I'd kicked off the delicate heels they'd forced me into somewhere between the sitting room and the front door. I stood barefoot on the marble steps of my father's palace, staring out at the dark Riyadh streets, and for the first time since I'd walked out, fear crashed over me like a wave. What had I done? Behind me, I could hear shouting. My father's voice, raw with rage, barking orders at my brother and uncle. They'd be coming after me. Any second now. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness. Jesus, you got me out. Now what? Where do I go? No audible answer. No miraculous chariot of fire appearing to whisk me to safety. Just silence and the distant sound of traffic and the pounding of my own terrified heart. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. Down the curved driveway, past the ornate gates that stood open. They were always open during parties, guests coming and going, and out onto the street. The night air was cool against my tear-stained face. The pavement was rough beneath my bare feet. I heard shouting behind me, car doors slamming, and engines starting. They were coming. I ducked into an alley between two buildings, pressing myself against the wall, trying to make myself invisible in my ridiculous, glittering wedding dress. My breath came in ragged gasps. My heart hammered so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Headlights swept past the alley entrance. My brother's car, I recognized the sound of the engine. They were searching for me. Please, Jesus. Please hide me. Please. The car slowed. I held my breath, pressing harder against the wall, praying the shadows would swallow me. The car stopped. I heard Khalid's voice, she can't have gone far. Check the alleys. Footsteps. Getting closer. I squeezed my eyes shut, my whole body trembling. This was it. They'd find me. Drag me back. And this time, there would be no miracle. Just consequences. But then, A door opened behind me. I spun around, a scream caught in my throat, and saw an old woman standing in a doorway I hadn't even noticed was there. She was tiny, hunched with age, wearing a simple black abaya and a face full of wrinkles that spoke of a hard life. She looked at me, at my wedding dress, my terrified eyes, my bare feet, and without a word, grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. She shut the door silently just as my Uncle Rashid's shadow appeared at the mouth of the alley. I stood frozen in her small, dark apartment, my chest heaving, listening to the footsteps pass by outside. Listening to my uncle's voice, "Nothing here." She must have gone the other direction. The footsteps retreated. The car engine revved. They were leaving. I collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the floor, my dress pooling around me like white foam. Silent sobs racked my body, relief and terror and disbelief all mixed together. The old woman locked her door with shaking hands, then turned to look at me. "Bride running from her wedding," she said in Arabic, her voice cracked with age. "I've lived 83 years and never seen that before. Please," I choked out. "Please don't tell anyone I'm here. They'll kill me. My father will." "Hush, child." She shuffled toward me, her movements slow but purposeful. "I know what men do to daughters who embarrass them. I know because I had to bury my own sister after our father's honor got the better of his love." She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much suffering, too much injustice, too much death in the name of honor and tradition. "What's your name?" she asked. I told her. My real name, the one that means precious jewel. The name that had never felt true until Jesus called me his. "Well, precious jewel, you can't stay here long. They'll search every house in this neighborhood once they realize you didn't get far. But I can hide you for tonight. Give you clothes, food. And tomorrow," she paused, studying my face. "Tomorrow, you'll need to disappear." "I have nowhere to go," I whispered. "No one who would help me." "What about the Christians?" she asked quietly. I stared at her. "What?" "The Christians. The foreign workers. The embassies. Someone must have helped you learn about," she gestured at me. "Whatever made you run from that wedding? How did you?" "Child, I'm old, not blind. I saw the light." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I was walking past your father's house tonight. I live 3 streets over. I saw the light pouring from your windows. Light that had no source. And I heard the screaming. The chaos. That wasn't just a girl refusing marriage. That was God." Tears spilled down my cheeks again. "Jesus," I whispered. "His name is Jesus. And he saved me. He performed a miracle right there in front of everyone. My father tried to burn the Bible and it wouldn't burn, Anne." She held up a wrinkled hand, stopping me. "I don't need to know the details. What I know is you made a choice that will cost you everything. And if you stay in Riyadh, you'll be dead before the week is out." She was right. I knew she was right. "There's a community," she said slowly, as if weighing each word carefully. "Foreign workers. Filipinos, mostly. Some of them are Christian. They meet in secret, in houses, moving locations every week to avoid the religious police. I know this because my neighbor's daughter married a Filipino man, converted to Islam to do it, but his family still practices in secret. Where? I asked desperately. How do I find them? I don't know exactly. But tomorrow morning, there's a woman who cleans houses in this neighborhood. Filipina. Her name is Maria. She comes to my building every Thursday. If anyone can help you, it's her. But tomorrow is Friday, I said. The holy day. They'll be searching everywhere after Jummah prayer. They'll put out word in the mosques. My father has connections. Which is why you'll be hidden until Maria comes, and then you'll leave with her, dressed as a housemaid. They won't be looking for a servant. They'll be looking for a runaway bride. It was insane. Dangerous. Impossible. It was my only chance. That night, I slept on the old woman's floor, wrapped in a thin blanket that smelled like mothballs and age, still wearing my wedding dress because she had no other clothes that would fit me. I didn't really sleep. I lay there in the darkness, listening to every sound, footsteps outside, car engines, voices, terrified that each one was my father or brother or uncle coming to drag me back. But more than fear, I felt something else. Awe. Jesus had done exactly what he'd promised. He'd delivered me. The Bible hadn't burned, I'd seen it with my own eyes, everyone had seen it. And he'd provided this old woman, this stranger who owed me nothing, to hide me when I had nowhere to go. I am with you always, he'd said. Even to the end of the age. Thank you, I whispered into the darkness. Thank you, Jesus. I don't know what happens next, but thank you for right now. Thank you for being real. Thank you for loving me enough to save me. And in that cramped, poor apartment, wearing a wedding dress meant for a marriage I'd escaped, I felt more peace than I'd ever felt in my father's palace. Maria came at 8 in the morning. I heard the old woman talking to her in the hallway, explaining in rapid Arabic mixed with broken English that she had a situation that needed help. When Maria entered the apartment and saw me, her eyes went wide. She was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and the tired look of someone who worked too hard for too little. She took in my wedding dress, my swollen eyes, my desperate expression. Please, I said in English, my voice hoarse from crying. Please help me. They're looking for me. My family, they'll kill me if they find me. I need to get out of Riyadh. Out of Saudi Arabia. I don't have money or papers or anything, but I'll work, I'll do whatever you need, just please. Why are they after you? Maria asked carefully. I hesitated. This was the moment. If I told her the truth and she was a devout Muslim, she might turn me in. But if I lied and she found out later, I refused to marry the man my father chose. And I converted to Christianity. I accepted Jesus as my savior, and my family tried to force me to renounce him, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. And so I ran. Maria's expression didn't change for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. Praise God, she whispered. And I knew Jesus had sent her. Maria worked fast. She gave me her spare uniform, plain black dress, white apron, hijab to cover my hair. She rolled up my wedding dress and jewelry into a bundle that the old woman promised to dispose of carefully, piece by piece, so no one would find it and trace it back to her apartment. You're coming with me as my assistant, Maria said, her voice calm and efficient. "We're cleaning a house across the city. No one will look twice at two maids. Keep your head down. Don't speak Arabic, pretend you only speak English. If anyone asks, you're my cousin, newly arrived from the Philippines." "But I don't look Filipina," I protested. "You look Middle Eastern, which could be lots of things. Turkish, Iranian, Persian, Lebanese. Keep your head covered, don't make eye contact with men, and no one will question it. Trust me, to wealthy Saudis, all foreign workers look the same." It was a terrible plan. It had 1,000 ways to fail. But it was all I had. We left the old woman's apartment through a back entrance, joining the morning flow of workers heading to their jobs. I kept my eyes down, my heart racing, expecting at any moment to hear my father's voice, to feel hands grabbing me. But nothing happened. We walked 3 blocks. Caught a bus. Sat in the back where women were segregated from men. Maria kept up a stream of Tagalog conversation, as if we were just 2 workers discussing our day, while I nodded and pretended to understand. The city passed by the window, familiar streets I'd driven through 100 times in my father's luxury cars, now seeing them from the perspective of the invisible workers who kept everything running while remaining unseen. We got off at a wealthy neighborhood. Walked to a large villa. Maria knocked on the servant's entrance, and we were led in by another Filipina woman who eyed me curiously but didn't ask questions. We cleaned that house for 6 hours. I'd never cleaned anything in my life. Never scrubbed a floor or washed a toilet or done laundry. Maria showed me patiently, covering for my incompetence, explaining to the other workers that I was new, still learning. My hands blistered. My back ached. My knees hurt from kneeling on tile. And I'd never felt more grateful. Because I was free. Hidden in plain sight. Working alongside women who knew what it meant to survive by being invisible. That evening, Maria took me to a house in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Riyadh. A small, cramped apartment shared by 6 Filipino workers, all Christians, all part of the underground church. They welcomed me with tears and prayers and warnings. "You can't stay in Saudi," one of them said. "Eventually, they'll find you. Your father has money, connections. He'll put pressure on authorities. You need to get to an embassy." "But I have no passport," I said. "My father kept all my documents." "Then we'll have to get you out another way." They told me about the network, Christians who helped smuggle converts and persecuted believers out of Saudi Arabia to neighboring countries where they could claim asylum. It was dangerous. Illegal. People had died trying. But it was my only hope. Over the next 3 weeks, I lived in that apartment, sleeping on floors, working as a housemaid during the day, attending secret church meetings at night where we whispered prayers and sang worship songs with voices barely above a murmur. And every day, I heard reports. My father had put out word that I was missing. A substantial reward for information leading to my return. Religious police were investigating. My face, thankfully an old photo, before I'd changed, was circulated to mosques and community leaders. I was being hunted. But I was also being hidden. Protected. Provided for. And in that tiny apartment, with those brave women who risked everything to follow Jesus in a country that would kill them for it, I learned what true faith looked like. Not the ritualistic, fear-based submission I'd known in Islam. But sacrificial love. Joy in persecution. Hope in the midst of danger. They taught me to pray, really pray. Not memorized words, but honest conversation with Jesus. They taught me worship songs in English and Tagalog. They shared their stories of conversion, of loss, of God's faithfulness. And I discovered something beautiful. I'd lost my family, my home, my wealth, my country. But I'd gained brothers and sisters who loved me more truly than my own blood ever had. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 27 days after I'd run from my wedding, Maria shook me awake before dawn. "It's time," she whispered. "The network has arranged everything. You're leaving tonight." My heart lurched into my throat. Where? How? Truck convoy to Bahrain. You'll be hidden in a cargo shipment. Once you're across the border, there are Christians there who will take you to a safe house, and from there, they'll help you apply for asylum to a Western country. But the border guards, if they find me, they won't. The driver is a believer. He's done this before. You have to trust God now. This is your only chance. That day was the longest of my life. I tried to work, to clean houses with Maria like it was any other day, but my hands shook so badly I dropped a vase and shattered it. The homeowner yelled at me in Arabic while I apologized profusely, and all I could think was, tonight. Tonight I either escape or die trying. We returned to the apartment at sunset. The other women gathered around me, laying hands on my shoulders, my head, praying over me in Tagalog and English and broken Arabic. "Lord Jesus, protect your daughter," one prayed, tears streaming down her face. "Hide her in the shadow of your wings. Make her invisible to those who seek to harm her. Guide her steps. Bring her to safety." They gave me what little they could. A backpack with some clothes, modest, nondescript. A bottle of water. Some food. A small Bible in English, the pages worn from being read and reread. "This is mine," Maria said, pressing it into my hands. "It's carried me through everything, leaving my family in the Philippines, years of loneliness here, persecution, fear. Now it's yours. Let it carry you too." I hugged each of them, these women who'd risked their lives to shelter me, to love me, to show me what the body of Christ truly looked like. "I'll never forget you," I choked out. "Never. You saved my life." "Jesus saved your life," Maria corrected gently. "We were just his hands and feet." At midnight, a truck pulled up 3 blocks from the apartment. I walked there alone, as instructed, my backpack on my shoulders, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The driver was a Pakistani man, older, with kind eyes and a worn face. He nodded at me, said nothing, just opened the back of the truck. Inside were crates of mechanical parts being exported to Bahrain. And between them, a small space, barely large enough for a person to crouch in. "You'll be in there for 3 hours, maybe 4, the driver said in accented English. "The border crossing, it takes time. You cannot make noise. Cannot move. Cannot cough or sneeze or cry. If the guards hear you, we're both dead. Understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. "There's a bottle if you need to, you know." He gestured vaguely, embarrassed. "And some blankets. It'll be cold. The drive is rough. But if God wills it, you'll be free by sunrise. If God wills it. I climbed into that tiny space between the crates. The driver arranged boxes around me, concealing the gap, leaving just enough room for air to circulate. The darkness was absolute. Suffocating. "I'll knock 3 times when we're safe," he said. "Don't come out before then. Even if the truck stops. Even if you hear voices. You stay silent. Understand?" "Yes," I whispered. "May Jesus protect us both." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The engine roared to life. And I was alone in the darkness, being smuggled across a border like contraband, gambling my life on the faithfulness of a God I'd only known for 2 months. The drive was exactly as terrible as he'd warned. Every bump sent me crashing against the crates. The metal floor was freezing. The air was thin and tasted like diesel and dust. I couldn't stretch my legs. Couldn't shift position without risking noise. I prayed. Constantly. Desperately. "Jesus, you brought me this far. Please don't let me die in this truck. Please get me across. Please." The truck slowed. Stopped. I heard voices, Arabic, authoritative. Border guards. My whole body went rigid. I pressed my hand over my mouth, terrified even my breathing would give me away. The back door opened. I heard footsteps. Someone climbing into the truck.